there's still some good deals out there. You just have to find them. And I tell people, be patient. Don't buy a rental property just to buy a rental property. Buy it because it's going to make you money over the long haul. Because buying a rental property is not what you're going to make today, but it's going to be what you make 15, 20 years from now as well.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 446. My guest today was $75,000 in debt when he first used his credit card to purchase his first rental property. Today, he owns and manages hundreds of properties through his virtual management company. Stephen Andrews just released his book, The New American Dream, a simple roadmap to purchasing investment properties. And he's here today to share his key steps to jumpstart your real estate business, scale your investments, and avoid common pitfalls. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Really looking forward to today.
I'm looking forward to hearing how you got started investing in real estate, because it sounded like it was quite the adventure. Why don't you fill us in?
So going back over a decade, I took a real estate class my senior year at High Point University, and I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but just didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, and fell in love with real estate after taking that class. My professor owned real estate in Chicago, and really the whole purpose of the class was to get your feet wet, and the project was to virtually buy an apartment complex in Chicago using a simulator, make it profitable the first year. If you did that, you got a good grade. If you didn't do that, your grade suffered. And so I just fell in love with real estate. And so fast forward a few years after graduating, because I was too scared to get into real estate. I just didn't have the courage yet to dive in. But I was lucky. I was able to link up several years later with my now mentor named Joel here in Central North Carolina. And, he really helped navigate all my fears to get me to where I needed to be. And he told me to read a book called Building Wealth by Russell Whitney. And it really outlined how I've done this business over the last decade. And so, didn't have a lot of money. And I told Joel that. And I said, you know what? I'm $75,000 in student loan debt. I made a great purchase as a 22-year-old of buying a new car. Such a great asset, right? To do. And I wish I wouldn't have done that now, but, looking back on it, but you can't tell a 22-year-old too much. And so I didn't have a lot of money. And so I was telling Joel that. And he said, it's okay. Find the money somehow, some way for your down payment. And so I had a credit card. And that credit card allowed me to pull money off of it. And don't get me wrong, credit cards then, or this credit card was 7% interest. So much different than the landscape today. But I was able to pull money off that credit card and go put it on a down payment of the first few properties that I bought. And now fast forward a decade, hundreds of properties later, I flip houses, loan money. I wrote this new book called The New American Dream to help and give back to people. And I've also launched a consulting business, a business coach business to help people get into this business as well, called Sorex Consulting. So kind of it's been a full circle for me, because for me, I needed help getting in this business. And I truly believe mentorship is the best way for it. So you don't make some of those mistakes early on. And so now I'm being able to be a mentor to other people, which is just so rewarding.
You talk about being afraid to get started investing and, take that first step. What were some of the tricks that you used to overcome that fear?
Your mind plays tricks on you, right? Your mind likes to stay in a comfort zone. And so anything new, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone, and there's going to be a little bit of fear. And so I didn't necessarily fully understand that then. But with having Joel there as a mentor, he said, you know what, you can do this. If you do it the right way, you won't fail. You do X, Y, and Z, you won't fail. And so, it was one of those things where you almost had to psych yourself out a little bit almost every day. You know what, I got this until you started believing it. It's kind of that mentality, fake it till you make it. But this was in my brain. I got to keep telling my brain, hey, I'm going to be okay. And one day I was okay, right? And it was the best decision I've ever made. But, I tell people some of the best blessings in life comes from when you get out of your comfort zone, when you do something that scares you a little bit. And I'm so glad that I made that jump.
Talk about that a little more specifically. When you made that jump and you used your credit card to buy that first property, what was that property and how much money were you able to finance on your credit card?
So I bought two different properties at once. They were side by side. My buying philosophy was buy the worst house on the block because you get it at a discounted rate and you can fix it up and you would have less money tied up in that property. Where if you bought the best house on the block, there's a lot less upside because it's already the best. And so I was able to do that. I was able to pull money off my credit card, put it on as the down payment. Both of these properties were in the mid 30,000 range. And so I was able to then pull even more money off the credit card to then fix them up. And within a few months, I was able to take them back to the bank and refinance them to pull my sweat equity back out, pay my credit cards back off. And now, I have two good looking properties where the rents are elevated and they're no longer the worst house on the block. They're one of the best houses on the block. And then the money that I was able to get out of the property, not only was I able to pay the credit card off, but I had a little bit of money left over. And no, you don't go use that money to go buy a nice shiny boat or a brand new car or anything like that. You want to roll that into an appreciating asset instead of a depreciating asset. And so I use that money to turn around and roll into my next property. And then to be able to buy it, the down payment to be able to fix it up. And I've just been able to do that hundreds of times. And so I've just kind of rolled money from one property to the next property. And it's worked out quite well.
Does it work out that way every time where you generate enough money that you can pull out that you can then put into the next property? Or have you had to come up with other creative financing solutions along the way?
I would say it's worked probably 75, 80% of the time, but there's always those few times it doesn't work. So there's been times where I've ran different numbers and, I feel like I'm going to get a certain amount of money out of a property to be able to roll into the next one. But for whatever reason, it might not have appraised for enough, or for whatever reason, the bank says, hey, I can't loan that amount of money on it, but I can loan this amount of money. And so, your money kind of comes up short just a little bit. And so you got to get a little bit more creative. And that's why I always tell people save for a rainy day. My parents always told me that as a little kid. And because the rain always comes at some point. And so it could be a drizzle or it could be a downpour, but it always comes. And so in scenarios like that, I had enough money still in my bank account to be able to get the shortcomings fulfilled. And so that's really helped out. But you're right, there's different ways to do this. There's so many creative ways. I've done seller financing deals where, you haven't had to put a ton of money down and, because the person doesn't want to get killed with capital gains taxes and it's just been the best of both worlds. And so there's definitely been other creative ways I've done this other than just going to a bank.
What does a rainy day look like in your world? I mean, what are some of the rainy day situations that you've run into with some of your properties?
They come when you least expect it, right? It's almost like that afternoon thunderstorm on a sunny summer day. It wasn't supposed to rain that day. Several different ones are, you could have a storm literally come through and take some shingles off and now you got a leaky roof and it's caused damage on the inside. Or you could have somebody break into a property that you might be turning and they do some damage. Or I have a no pet policy, not unless it's an emotional support animal or service animal. And so sometimes you'll get calls, hey, somebody was able to get a pet past you. And, you have to take care of that. And probably some of the worst ones, I've had a house catch on fire before where, a tenant had lit a candle and, somehow that candle fell into clothes and it caught the whole house on fire. And just some bad situations, certainly situations you don't necessarily think about when you first get into this business. But certainly I think about those now of how to prepare for those. And then, you take the step further, even financing. There's going to be times where a banker tells you no. And it might not have anything to do with you. It might have everything to do with they might have loaned enough on single family homes or duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, or small apartments. And that part of their portfolio is just closed for the rest of the year. And that's happened before. And so, some people, would just stop there. But that's why you want to be diverse with your lenders of where you're getting capital from or money from to be able to buy properties. And so, the rain comes in so many different ways, and it doesn't bother me nearly as much today as what it did when I was a new investor. I told myself I was going to drive myself crazy if I let every little bitty thing bother me. And so I try not to let that bother me as much anymore. But you want to be prepared for those times.
Give us a typical scenario of the types of deals that you're doing now. Like, what's your niche? And I'd appreciate it if you could kind of give us some dollar amounts too. How much you're putting into it, how much rehab, what kind of money you're able to pull out these days.
My rental portfolio of my business is pretty set. Certainly properties are kind of at an all-time high currently. And so I've kind of shifted my focus from buying rentals, even though my portfolio of rentals is single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and small apartment complexes. But now I'm doing more of flips and more of loaning money. But there's still some times where I'll buy a rental property. And so normally, it depends on if it's 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom. I try to find properties in areas that other people might not know about. And so I'm here in Central North Carolina, situated between really Raleigh, Greensboro, Charlotte area. And so Raleigh is booming. Charlotte's booming, and everything in between starting to boom now because nobody can afford those areas. And so they're going to other communities. And so even here in Burlington, a 2-bedroom house is $150,000 now. And so depending on what you can rent that property for, it might still be a good investment. It might not, but I can actually travel 20 minutes north of Burlington to a small community that doesn't have a ton of investors going in there. And I can find that same 2-bedroom, 1-bath for $75,000. And so I'm doing that. I'm trying to find those niches within the bigger communities where other people might not be investing. And you will find a much better deal. When you go to these other places, my rents are within $100 of what they are in Burlington. And so the value that I'm getting, because I'm paying far less for the property, doesn't take nearly as much to fix it up. And so bought a $75,000 house. I had to put $10,000 in it. And now I'm being able to rent that property out for $1,400. And so it's just a great deal all the way around. Where if I was in Burlington, it would have been $150,000. It would have cost me $25,000 to fix it up. I could have rented it for $1,500. But $100 difference, your payment's going to be more than that $100 rent difference there. And so I really encourage people to try to find areas where there's not as much competition to buy these houses, especially when you're looking for the worst house in the block, because they're certainly out there.
I'm hearing you say that you're kind of on hold right now as far as investing in properties because they're at an all-time high. When do you see yourself going back in, or do you see yourself going back to that strategy?
It's one of those things where I'm being very choosy about what I do buy now. With having several hundred rental units, it's not like I'm a new investor where I really want to grow very fast and that sort of thing. Because when I was really growing, I was buying 20 units a year. My best year, I was buying 60 in a year, where, I'm in a position where I can slow down. And certainly COVID taught me don't have all your eggs in one basket. And that's why I got into lending money and doing flips as well. But, it's one of those things where it really depends on what area of the country you're in. I see, property values holding strong in most areas in North Carolina, but some have actually started to come down a little bit in these not as populated areas because the demand's just not there. And so I think you have to be very picky. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm not in a position where I just have to go buy 20 in a year just to say I bought 20 in a year. I'm in a position where I want to make sure the numbers make sense. And so there's still times right now where the numbers make sense, but then there's times where the numbers don't make sense. And so you just have to be very careful about that. And I'm also evaluating the properties now where is it a rental or is it a flip? Because now that's two completely different things. I think right now my company that we flip houses in, we're booming because these house prices still make sense to be able to flip houses and I can still turn a great profit, but there's still some good deals out there. You just have to find them. And I tell people, be patient. Don't buy a rental property just to buy a rental property. buy it because it's going to make you money over the long haul. Because buying a rental property is not what you're going to make today, but it's going to be what you make 15, 20 years from now as well.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbAssociatesLLC.com. So I want to switch gears, and I kind of want to, in your bio, and I imagine in your book, there's some top 5, top 3 type lists. And I want to ask you about some of them because I found them intriguing. One of the things that I'd like to ask you about is the top 3 creative methods for financing your properties. Like what are those top 3 methods?
More now than ever, there are so many creative ways for you to finance things. 10 years ago, you didn't hear about a lot of this stuff, but still my number one go-to is either a hard money lender or a bank. And the reason why I say that, a hard money lender lends just like a community hometown bank. And so I never go to a big time bank. I want the bank to know who I am. I want to talk to the president or vice president of the bank that makes these decisions because it makes it just so much easier to do it. The second thing is seller financing. If you don't have a ton of money for a down payment, seller financing is one of those things where you could get into real estate with little to no money down, because most of the people that are seller financing might be a little bit older, C70s that own rental property for a long time, and they don't want to get killed in taxes. And so they're fine with just seller financing the property. They want a little bit down, and it's the best of both worlds. And then the third thing, there's so many different avenues for the third, but one thing that I'm seeing a lot of right now is either a lease with an option to buy or a rent to own option. And so just say, let's use the lease with an option to buy scenario. Essentially what you're doing is you're putting some money down, you're leasing the property. So you're managing the properties, you're being able to get income coming in. And then on a set date, you're eligible to buy that property. And so what I'm seeing is a lot of banks are actually seeing that as almost like you own the property. They're almost allowing you to refinance that property where you're not having to put down that 15, 20, 25%. And so creatively, that's great because, a lot of people, the reason why they can't really grow their business the way they want to grow it is because of that down payment, the amount of money you have to put down, to get into properties. And so that's probably the most 3 creative ways to do it. One's very traditional, but it's traditional from the sense, go local, stay local. And don't go to the big banks. And then the other 2 are certainly a lot more creative.
Let's talk about partnerships. What are some of the questions? And I think in your bio, it said the top 6 questions you should be asking yourself before entering into a real estate partnership.
Partnerships are tough. I've been lucky that I own my companies by myself, but I created a rental management company where I had family a part of it. My parents were part of it. My brother was a part of it. And it's hard, even with it being family. And so you need to be asking yourself, because a partnership is not, when I compare it to relationships in life, a partnership's not like a boyfriend and girlfriend where you can break up at any time, you can go your separate ways. A partnership's more like marriage, where if you want out of it, you got to get attorneys involved. You got to do a lot more things to get out of it. So there's different things you have to really think about when you're getting into a partnership. Do your values align? Does your work ethic align? Do you want the same things? Do you want the same type properties? What's everybody's role going to be? Who's going to be in charge? Because it's that old saying, you can't have, what's that old saying? There's too many chiefs and not enough Indians, saying everybody can't be the chief, right? Everybody can't run the show, because then you're going to be pulled in a million and one different directions. And so you got to have that point of contact of like, okay, this is my role. It has to be clearly defined. And then, think about, what life happens. So for instance, I had a buddy of mine that wanted to get into a partnership with one of his friends and buy some real estate. And they were both gung ho and told him to be cautious, because partnerships are just tough. And he was cautious about it. And good thing he didn't get into it. 6 months later, the guy he was going to get in a partnership with ended up getting in a relationship and says, you know what, I don't care anything about real estate anymore. I don't even want to do this. And so what people don't realize is that, you have to almost kind of predict a little bit of the future, and ask those questions. Okay, well, what if you get in a relationship with someone? What if you have a kid? What if you get married? What if you move away? How does all this work? Because it's not like you can just, turn it off like a light switch. It's one of those things that you're going to be around for quite some time. And so my personal preference is don't do a partnership if you don't have to, just because it's just so hard. There's so many different egos. There's so many different ways people want to manage those. But if you are going to do it, make sure you have some of those questions answered before getting into it.
And then I want to ask you about the top 4 things you need to know about local ordinances, codes, and procedures before getting into the rental business.
I think a lot of people don't realize, that there's different ordinances for different things, especially if you're new to real estate. I always tell people, go create that authentic relationship with your local municipality before you actually need to ask them anything, because they have codes for high grass. Most cities, if your high grass is more than 12 inches tall, it'll be flagged and you'll be fine. And then you got to pay a fine. And, for me, my tenants mow their yards, especially if they're in a single family home. And so I'm taking care of some of the multifamily stuff, but you need to know what those ordinances are. You also need to know the ordinances for zoning. If you have a single family home and you have somebody that wants to put a group home and rent your single family home and put a group home in it, there's ordinances against some of that, where you have to go jump through a few hoops. You might have to get it rezoned. You might have to fill out or do a change of use permit within a city. And so you want to make sure you have your zoning stuff taken care of as well. And then taking a step further than that, your inspections. A lot of people don't realize this, but in most cities, you're actually supposed to pull a permit to have new shingles put on. And the reason why is the city wants to know where you're going to dump those shingles at. And so it's things like that a lot of people don't realize. And so you want to make sure you're being resourceful. All that stuff is available online. If you contact your local municipality, whether it's your zoning department, code enforcement, inspections department, they can lead you in the right direction to find out what those codes and ordinances are. But I would also take it a step further, that they're not always on your side either, right? So their best interest is the city in which they work in and they work for. And so you have to also understand that too, that at times, and this has certainly happened to me personally, they'll try to lead you in a certain direction and twist what the ordinance really says to benefit them. And in reality, if you don't do your research, then they might be requiring you to do something that you don't even need to do. And so you also want to be resourceful. There's plenty of things out there that if you have questions, like for the state of North Carolina, it's called the Department of Insurance, that if you have any questions, whether it's zoning or inspections related, fire code related, they have people on payroll that are consultants that you can call them and ask them any of these questions. And they'll give you the citations, which is a citation is out of the code book, where to actually truly find what they're telling you. And I think that is so key to make sure you're not going down the wrong road.
So I know you do some coaching, and I'd love it if you could just share with our audience how they might find out more about you, get in touch with you, and feel free to plug anything you'd like to plug.
So 2 years ago, I was throwing around this idea of how to give back. And that's how the New American Dream come about, my best-selling book. But then I also wanted to take a step further in my consulting business, my business coach business, Sorex Consulting. was an extension of the book. And so you can find me at sorexconsulting.com. We're doing some great things there. There's a lot of great resources, whether it's the book. I also have a course you can also take. It's an 11-module course that's an extension of the book as well. It goes further in depth. It has downloadables. It has worksheets. It's really good of everything I've learned over the last decade. And then one thing that we have just launched with Sorex Consulting is a giveaway. And so you can actually go to shop.sorexconsulting.com or go to sorexconsulting.com and click on the giveaway tab. And we're going to give away or give somebody an opportunity to win $500,000 in January. And so when I think about how to give back, when I think about my own story of not having a ton of money to get into this business, I wanted to be able to give somebody an opportunity that might not really have an opportunity because they don't have money to get into it. And it's also something fun. You know, when you go on there, there's different T-shirts, there's books you can buy. There's different apparel for men's and women's and kids and coffee mugs and all the books and the course as well, where it's just something fun, you know, where people get to interact together and somebody will get an opportunity at that $500,000. And so starting in June, we're also going to give away $1,000 a month leading through the end of the year as well. That, you know, certainly we hope you use that to go in and buy some real estate, but it's really for anybody. You know, we don't want to put a label on it of just people that want to get into real estate. Well, we hope that this will lead the next generation into real estate and for us to be able to help them as well. And so we're really looking forward to that. It's going to be a ton of fun, and I hope a lot of people have fun doing it as well. And then I hope that one lucky winner, I hope this is life-changing for them. I really do.
What does one have to do to win $500,000?
So there's a couple different ways to get in. So there's certainly a free way. You know, there's a free way that, you know, if you just don't want to spend any money to get in the giveaway, you can certainly do that. And then for every dollar you spend on the site is one more entry into the giveaway. And so you can get the free one. And if that's where you want to stop, that's okay too. If you want multiple different opportunities to get into it, for every dollar you spend is another entry in. And so the website outlines all of that as well when you go to shop.sorexconsulting.com or go into sorexconsulting.com and click on giveaway, and it'll have all the information there for you. And so just really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fun next several months engaging with people that want to get into real estate.
Stephen, last question for you. What is your favorite hack or app?
I love going to local people that have done it before me. You know, so there's obviously people on social media you can follow and look after, but I love going to the local hometown person that has 20 more years of experience than me. And so I have a group of friends that have been in this business 25, 35, 40 years. And I love going to them, you know, because they've kind of seen a lot of everything. Right. And so being able to ask them questions and it's kind of almost like a network of mentorships, right? Where they help lead you right down the right road. And then two resources that I always turn to, certainly my own book, The New American Dream, A Simple Roadmap to Purchase and Investment Properties, but then also Building Wealth by Russell Whitney. It is a roadmap of exactly how I do my business as well. And so those two books were just life-changing for me in so many different ways.
Stephen, thanks for sharing that with us. And one more time, your book is called The New American Dream, A Simple Roadmap to Purchasing Investment Properties. And they find this on Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's also on the website as well. You can buy it through Amazon. That's perfectly fine. If you want to enter the giveaway and you want the book, certainly go to the giveaway site. It's also on there as well. And you actually get entries into the giveaway as well. So whichever one you want to do.
Thanks for coming on the show and sharing all your experiences and some really good tips and strategies on getting started in investing in real estate. It's been a real pleasure talking with you today, Stephen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's HIG investor.com.